Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome to Career Launch Live. We have a really important topic for you today. We're going to be talking about forgiveness in business today, which is not something that really gets addressed very often, but I feel that it's something that's very important. And I cannot think of a more perfect human to have talking with me today about forgiveness, the Miss Vannessa Blackstock. And if you do not know her, I'm going to let her introduce herself real quick. But just a reminder, I am your host, Catherine McCord. My background is in people operations consulting, DEI work, and I specialize in neurodiversity. I travel the world speaking and teaching about those topics. And now, without further ado, our wonderful guest, Miss Vannessa Blackstock. Tell us all about yourself.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Catherine. I am Vannessa, and I'm calling in from Jamaica. Yes, the island. I feel like I always have to say that because folks think I'm from New York. I am not. So
Nope.
that's where I'm chiming in from. And I currently am a freelance consultant. So I'm doing brand strategy coaching and operations management for solopreneurs. I work with career transitioners with coaching and a couple things I'm very much proud of. I'm board member and volunteer coordinator for an organization that is so much focused on neurodiversity action in many communities around the world.
Yes.
And I do virtual facilitation and community management for a company called TapNot, right? So I'm doing
Yes,
all
she
the
does.
things as well as leading into my passions of talent development, right? Similar to
Yeah.
Catherine, she's my mentor in that space. And so, yes, indeed, wanting so badly to be more involved in people operations, talent
Yeah.
development, all those things. Onboarding is
All the
part of my
things.
heart. So
All
yes,
the things.
all the
Yes.
things.
All the
I'm
things
also
that are human.
neurodiverse,
Yes.
girly,
Yes.
indeed. And I love
Both of
girls. So, and
us.
the Golden Girls. I have
Yeah,
to say
oh,
that.
yes. And we both love Golden Girls.
Yeah.
Huge fans. Absolutely. And I feel that it is worth noting. And good morning to Miss Tara Furiani. And you talk about an amazing human being, by the way. Tara Furiani, if anybody out there is looking for a
Indeed.
CPO or an HR just guru, Tara is your
She's the
person. She
HR
will do.
lady.
Oh, not the HR lady.
Not
She is
the
specifically not the HR lady.
not Tara coming from me after this. Ooh.
Oh Lord, yeah. Don't mess up her brand name.
Yes.
But no, Tara really is amazing. So today, forgiveness is the topic, and we don't talk about this a lot in business, and that hit me because I had the privilege of attending a really cool event run by a friend of mine named Joe called the Bond Summit, and I attended the inaugural event for that this past year, and in it, one of the presenters talked about, as part of his facilitation, forgiveness. And I was like, oh my God, you know what? We don't talk about that in the workplace and how important that is. There's like this, it's almost like it's taboo, which is weird because it's a positive topic. So I want to start off by what is your definition? Because I know the dictionary definition of forgiveness, but what is your definition slash attachment to the word forgiveness?
I appreciate that question. And it actually brings up a question for me when I think of the word forgiveness. It says, for me, and this has been my experience with it, have you learned? Is there change?
Mm,
Are there plans to change? Those are the questions that come up to make a decision for me personally to forgive and going through the process of actually forgiving someone. I think it is beyond saying I need to release this from my heart. So I have peace because there's that part of it, but there's
yes.
also this idea that's bigger than you that involves the other person that says, is there room for change? Are you showing signs of change? Do you
Yeah.
actually believe that what you did impacted someone else? Have you learned from this scenario? And what are the plans to move forward? So that's what happens in my mind when I think of the idea of forgiveness. It's like, hold
Oh,
on, let's ask some questions here.
yeah. Like, wait a minute. There's more details needed. There's
Yeah.
more details needed. And I love that you brought that up. And I feel the same way about it, by the way. That's something else that we share apparently. So I believe in letting things go. All things, you have to let things go for your own peace. And to me, that's one process. And then
Yep.
forgiving the person, especially with the intent of letting them back in, is a completely different process that involves a lot more understanding the situation, the background, all
Yeah.
that. And I do think it's also important to note that it's not just about forgiving people who did something knowing that they were being crappy, right?
Mm.
Sometimes you cause harm even though you had a positive intent. Maybe there was collateral damage that you had not foreseen. Maybe you thought that what you were doing was the right thing, and then later it's like, oops, I
Yeah.
boofed that. And there does tend to be this attitude of, well, I didn't mean it. Like, don't be so rude to me. But
Mm-hmm.
when you've done the damage, to your point, owning it
Yeah.
is a big
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
So my other question to you before we like really dive into specific examples is, how do you feel this has a spot in the workplace? Because I
Oh.
mean, there is kind of a difference between forgiving somebody for your personal reasons and
Mhm.
then letting them back into the business where they can affect everybody. So what is your take on that?
I love that question because it is something that is a conversation in our personal lives, right? It's how we navigate relationships well and in a healthy way. And so, why wouldn't it not ripple into the workplace, right? Why not? And so, I think for me, there are two sides to that coin, where it is what are our policies and standards when it comes to certain types of behavior or actions, right? And I think that's something that's important. So, there's some sort of standard that is open to
Right.
change, but that is important. And then the flip to that is, what are our day-to-day conversations like? What does culture say when it comes to forgiveness? Like, what is it that is the intangible, right? The thing that we don't
Right.
see in policy that happens in our conversations and our regular day-to-day. And so that's how I think forgiveness can show up or should be showing up in the workplace, right? So it
Yeah.
becomes that culture conversation of, okay, are we having regular meetings where instead of blaming others, we're coming together to get over the hurdle to get to the project end goal, right? Where is that
Right.
the conversation, or is it a conversation of blame? Is it that our standards say you've been late 5 times, we're going to have to write you up, in comparison
Right.
to, yes, that is our standard, but you've been late twice. I'm not going to talk to you at the fifth time to say, I'm going to write you up.
Yeah.
You've been late. It's like, you've been late a couple times this week. What's going on? Like, that's a different
Right.
culture experience than,
Right.
oh, it's been 5 times, I'm going to write you up, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think that's how
One
it can and should show up in the workplace.
I think that's interesting. And I think that's it. It is very important to touch on the fact that these types of things need to be built in and that
Mhm.
there does need to be flexibility. So you always want to be, one of the things I was taught by my mother, who was in HR for many years before I ever was, is that the importance of a difference between a policy and a procedure. And
Ooh.
policies are not flexible. So those are things you want to limit very much. Procedures are something different. So your
Yeah.
procedure should be, when you write somebody up 5 times for being late, but what if they're late because they have chemo treatments or something? You know what I mean? You have to leave room,
For
or what if it's
subjective
a
and
short term?
objective.
Exactly. Or what if it's a short term thing? This person's been on time for 2 years and now they're just having a hard time for whatever
Yeah.
reason. You, like you said, flexibility, that's paramount. So my first example for this, I want to start, we're gonna do all the way from like the beginning to the end of career here. We're just gonna like do
Yes,
this
ma'am.
timeline. So candidates sometimes need our forgiveness because, let me tell you, first of all, when somebody has been beaten down by the
Mhm.
job search process, okay, and let me tell you, it is brutal for people that do not understand how bad the job market is right now. It's horrible. Horrible.
And yeah.
There are people that should have been employed like that are sitting there for a year and a half, 2 years with no paycheck.
Mhm.
It's horrible. So first thing to understand, job market bad. So you get these folks that are going through this and are frustrated and they're irritated and they're trying their best to put their best foot forward, but occasionally they slip up,
Mhm.
or technology fails you and they're late, or they miss a meeting because it has happened to me where I know I put something on my calendar. I remember seeing it, I can find it, but it's just gone. And
Yeah.
there's no like record of it being deleted, because I get emails when my calendar appointments are deleted. It's just not there anymore. So technology can fail us. So let's talk about forgiveness in the candidate process, because this is, to be fair, their audition to come work for you. So you do kind of want to know that they're trying their best right
Yeah.
now. So where do you feel that forgiveness fits in for candidates?
I love that we're talking about it because I have been and am, sort of on both sides, where I have been in the position of interviewing, both working with you and active sourcing for roles. And then on the reverse, where I have been a candidate and I'm kind of currently in that market right now. And so forgiveness for candidates does look like, okay, where can I offer grace and patience for this person that is going through the thing? that is going
Right.
through whatever that thing is, in addition to the struggle and stress of this process. And at the
Right.
same time, where do I draw the line to say, hey, show up respectful, be on time,
Yeah.
don't say all the things like I don't need to know that you're hungover right now. That's not
Oh my God,
relevant
that
to
one.
what we're
Oh
talking
God.
about.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about that real quick. Forgiveness for saying something flippin' weird in your interview, because I have
Yeah.
had, oh my gosh, I've had candidates tell me about their diarrhea. I have had candidates that wanted to tell me about their divorce.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I am not your therapist. I don't
Be
understand why this is.
yourself. We love
Yeah.
to show up authentically, but at the same time, there's something called time and place. There's something
Yeah.
called this person
Yeah.
is a stranger, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's definitely where the
Oh, you
forgiveness with
might
the
make them
candidate experience.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, right? All the
I don't know
things
what
at
to
one
say to this.
time.
Like, I don't know what to say about the fact that you're angry about your soon to be ex-husband. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know
or
what
the
to tell you
previous
about that.
employer that you worked with, right? Being
Oh,
lashing out on all of that, and then on the end of the interview, where we're supposed to say, okay, I both understand and empathize, and at the same time, this is a red flag. Like, what's happening
yeah,
here?
why are
How
you talking
bitter are
about
you really? Are you bringing this attitude into the first day of work with us?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
those are conversations of, yeah, for sure, that forgiveness piece is very much okay. Where can I offer grace and patience, but also
yes,
draw the line of allowing candidates to understand you're still supposed to show up professionally and
yes.
have some, work ethic day
So,
one in this process.
so this is, and of course with neurodiversity, you and I know, sometimes you just got to understand they're going to talk so much,
Yeah.
like about just all the, like, because their brain just goes wee,
Yeah.
and or sometimes they're not going to talk quote quote enough or something like
That's
that. So the
true.
first thing is make sure that you're practicing universal interviewing techniques. If you
Hmm.
don't know what that is, reach out to me. We can. That's a whole other show, trust me. But we need to be interviewing with the understanding that different people are going through different things, different people process different ways, different people have different cultural backgrounds, and we need to be a
Yeah.
lot more uh, understanding of these aspects. For instance, I'll tell you one that was hard for me is there are some cultures in which women are not as much a part of the business world, or women are
Hmm.
still seen as less than, or you shouldn't be talking to them about certain topics. And I have interviewed people from these cultures who really struggled to to treat me as an equal, or to to show any sort of respect towards me. And I had to balance like my personal response to this, right? Which was like, ah, like,
Yeah.
what the heck, And then also going into the idea of respecting their background. Maybe they're trying to learn and do better, but then also thinking about how is this going to work with the team,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
But giving some grace for the ones that I could tell were trying. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you could, like, because you could feel it. Like they're like, oh my gosh, this just
This is
feels so wrong.
hard.
But I'm
Hmm.
trying, and I'm doing the things, and I'm trying. So back to your point about effort,
Yeah.
I think that's a big key. So when forgiving candidates, I think consider balancing the repercussion aspect, how this could, think about how it could go down the line. Just kind of look at the broader picture. If this
Hmm.
is an isolated incident, let it roll off. Or if it's
True.
something that could, just be, just something that happened randomly, like the tech issues, let it roll off. If they're being a little awkward, they're nervous, you're not hiring them to interview anyway,
Yeah.
or to get interviewed anyway. So just let it roll off. Um, if they say something that's maybe a little uninclusive, maybe just provide a little bit of education, see how they respond to that.
Exactly. And I think that's the key part of being able to, in
Yes.
that moment, course correct, basically. Being able to say, you said this thing, and I wanted to dig a little deeper into the meaning behind that. And that gives you insight into, okay, is this a cultural thing, which is sort of more of their experience, and that's what they believe, in comparison to, no, I have this thought, and I think I want to learn and improve. I want to shift my perspective on this thing. I hear what you're saying, and I want to see why your perspective is the way it is. Those are two
Right.
different individuals stepping into a conversation. So that's
Yes.
pretty key. Hmm.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you can't you have to consider other aspects, and you have to see how they respond. And
Yeah.
also, by the way, that's a great interviewing technique anyway, because that tells you how do they respond to you having to solve a problem that's on
Yep.
their end. So that's interesting. Yeah. So that's the candidates. So give them a grace. They're going through a lot. And
Yeah.
interviewing is a super weird, awkward process. Like
It's so
it
annoying that
really
it is
does.
a skill that needs to be perfected. Isn't that crazy? Like
It
you are
shouldn't
coming in
be.
to do a job that has nothing to do with this thing, but it's like a skill. And then that's the
Which, by the way,
annoying part.
I
That's like
put
the people.
100%. I put 100% of it on. No, I'm gonna take it back. I put like 95% of the
Ah,
burden on the hiring team
yeah,
because it's your job to be good at interviewing, not theirs. You
exactly.
need to help them succeed. But again, that's a whole other show. We're not going to go down
True,
that road.
true,
But
true, true,
just a
true, true,
side
true.
note. But just a side note. Hiring teams, that's on you. And yes, Jason made a great point about like stuff like eye contact and stuff like that. That's not even a forgiveness thing. This is just how they are. You don't need to make eye contact to do almost any job. I've
Yeah,
had doctors that don't make eye contact that are wonderful. I've known a salesperson who didn't make eye contact who was highly successful. So you don't need eye contact
exactly. There are
for a lot of things.
expectations
But
of an interview that are just mind blowing. And as I said, there's
yeah,
you need an interview skill to interview well.
yes.
It's ridiculous when it has nothing to do with the job that you're being hired for. But yeah,
So let's talk about the flip side of that.
yes, ma'am.
So when somebody is not being inclusive of you in whatever that means. So maybe you're a mother and somebody keeps, you know, thinking that you can't do your job because you're pregnant. Maybe they or you just had a baby.
Yeah.
What if sorry, now my cat's decided to have an asthma attack in the middle of the
In
show.
the middle of, I was
In
talking
the middle
about
of the show.
inclusive experiences. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Livy, for giving us that example. Um, so then you have maybe you have somebody who doesn't understand cultural,
Hmm.
situations, who's not flexible to your cultural holidays or your cultural practices. Maybe you have, neurodiversity, back to the eye contact, that you have somebody who keeps pushing that or pushing camera on when that's really not a good option for you. How do you forgive that? Because that can feel very unsafe. And so
Hmm.
even once the problem's been remedied, that can leave a very unsafe feeling. So how do we go about fixing that?
Yeah, and I think even from the hiring experience, if that's what you've received, it's very hard to think, oh my goodness, is this a widespread thing? And I love to be honest because you pulled that out of me, and I naturally love to be honest. And I think our experiences are valuable at least to one other person. And for me, I've had both in the workplace being a comment being made about the fact that I have locks, as well as in an interview. I remember an interviewer literally said to me, um, so that's an interesting hairstyle. Is that something you'll have on like all the time? I remember going, yeah, it's locks, it's my hair. And her comment being, well, working with clients face to face, it might be something that will start the wrong kind of conversation.
I have a
And
question.
so,
I'm so sorry. I
yeah,
gotta ask this question.
yes, ma'am.
I have so many questions actually, but the one I'm actually going to ask is, where was this person located?
Hmm.
I'm curious. Where were they located? Like what country?
It was in the States.
Yep, that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
So it
Okay,
was
that's
a
horrible.
virtual interview.
Anyway, that's nice
Yeah.
and terrible.
And
All
she said
right.
it would start the wrong kind of conversation if I were to be facing clients of theirs. And so there was a part of me that was very much okay. To your point, we're showing up professionally. My personal reaction might be to be, that I don't believe that, versus saying, I hear you, I understand. And if that's the culture of your company, I appreciate you being honest about it up front. That was my response, right? To be able to say, okay, this seems like a wider problem. It could be a wider problem. It could just be her perspective, but if it isn't, oh my goodness, can you imagine my future
Oh my God.
supervisor or boss saying
Oh
to
my
me,
God. Yeah.
hey, cover your hair, or we're not going to take you to the thing because this could be a bad conversation starter. So there's a part of it that says, yeah, we need to forgive, but also, yeah, this is a culture issue that maybe is bigger than me to fix. So the forgiveness for me was in that moment. People are different. Everyone has their perspective and thoughts and impressions of what my hair means. And that has nothing to do with me. And maybe this just isn't the right fit just because of my hair.
I have so many opinions about that
I'm
situation.
so
And I
sorry I
think,
stumped you with that
no,
one.
no, no, that was a great example. Thank you
Yeah,
for that
yeah.
example. I'm having to like push those things out of my mind to focus on the topic at hand because I have so many things to say about that.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
um, so that's actually a great example of just okay. So now it's cruddy. But what if this had been a person that you're already in the job?
Hmm.
And now you've dealt with it. And let's say HR steps in, lets the person know that was not appropriate. They do their whole thing, let's say they do it all correctly.
Yeah.
Now, how do you, Vannessa, continue working with this human?
Okay. I did have
How
a
does that work?
superior actually say to me, "Oh, I smell marijuana. Do you smell that?" As a joke to the fact that I had locks in my hair because she had just seen it for the first time when I first got it done years ago. So that part about in the workplace, it actually happened.
Mhm.
Forgiveness for me, Vannessa, did very much look like in her presence, being very much aware that if me, I first of all, I've never smoked in my life. Like, guys, don't even think this is I actually do smell like marijuana. That was not the case. It was a joke that she was attempting to make in public in front of the people that I supervise. And so forgiveness for me did very much look like three dots. I did not know what to do. And I still haven't gotten to the point of being like, okay, how do I handle that? Yes, if HR was able to go through the proper channels and do all the right things, what would that have done look like? Would it have been her saying in a meeting, I apologize for the comment I had made? That would have helped a lot for me if that happened. If it was that we were in the public setting and someone else said, "Why would you say that?" and having that person respond and go, "You're right. That was a joke that landed in the wrong way. My apologies." So I think there's something to be said about the phrasing "I'm sorry" and not "I'm sorry if this landed weird" or "if you feel this way." It's "I'm sorry. That was not my intention."
First of all,
Right?
yes, that's how you apologize. It's
Yeah.
not I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry that's your reaction. I'm sorry. No, no, then you're not sorry. You're
Yeah.
sorry you're having to deal with it. So it is the wording and the understanding and the
The
acknowledgement.
acknowledgement that what you just
Acknowledgement
said or
instead.
did has caused harm and or some impact on someone else. So that for me,
So,
Vannessa, that level of forgiveness would come
mhm.
from just an apology.
Okay. So
Hmm.
apology was a big thing and acknowledgement. So
An
acknowledgement and
acknowledgement.
apology were a big step. So I'm curious if you don't mind sharing with us, how did not getting that opportunity to forgive,
Mhm.
that opportunity to address the problem, how did that impact you?
It made me very much aware that this was not someone that would approach me with kindness possibly ever, because when someone locks their hair in outside of it being just a protective style for a period, this is my permanent hair. Like if I want to get rid of this, I'd have to shave my head. Like I've locked my hair permanently, and it's my natural hair too, you know what I mean? So it's not something that I could be like, oh no, you're uncomfortable, I need to make an adjustment. And so, yeah, it did make me very much aware that a comment like this could happen again. Because if it did once, nothing happened, you didn't apologize, no one said anything, it will probably happen again. So there was a preparation on my end of, oh, this possibly will happen again. How do I prepare for that next time? Was more
And
of
I
what my mind went to.
I want to hit on that too because real quick because this is something I talk about a lot that when you send a message when you don't address something in the workplace as a leader
Mhm.
or as HR, you send a message that this behavior is okay. And I guarantee you weren't the only one that felt that. It was I guarantee you felt by other humans that were sitting there like, "Oh gosh, if they're going to say
Yeah.
that to her, what are they going to say to me? How is this going to go?" So, acknowledgement and apology paramount in this process. And I completely agree, by the way. And so I had a situation. This is a more benign example, I feel like, but it's nonetheless important. I had a team member that I hired years ago that lied about criminal
Mm.
background. And I found out about it. And I said, okay, I brought him in. And I said, tell me what happened. He was just expecting to get fired. Like, just because
I've
technically
been caught.
that's normally what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and we talked about it. And we talked about the whole story. And I also verified certain details of said story. And I said, okay, and I'm going to ask you this next question. I want you to feel free to think about it and then come back to me if you want to. But I said,
Hmm.
why did you lie to me about it? And he said, I didn't think I would get a job.
The response I expected, yeah.
Yeah. And
That mean you hired me on merit, but because you know
yeah,
this, I'm gonna get fired.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm not going to fire you. And I said, but the condition of that is that I need you to understand that the biggest problem here was the lie. And I need you to assure me that that will never happen again. And I explained why that was the biggest issue. And he kind of sat there and looked at me. He goes, thank you. And I understand completely. And even came back to me the next day and re acknowledged it. He said, I
Mm.
want you to understand I wasn't just blowing smoke. I understand the trust that I broke. I appreciate you give me the second chance. Thank you, yada, yada. And then he asked me why I didn't fire him.
Ooh.
And I said, because of everything else that you've done, that you've shown, and that you've given. I said, I balanced it. I said, I also assumed it was out of fear of not getting the
Mm-hmm.
job. So I said, I get it, and we moved forward and it was never brought up again. That was the end of it.
Yeah.
And to your point, when he came back the next day and re-acknowledged it, that was the moment I knew I made the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
This is a human that just needed a job and was just scared. And that's it. And I can forgive that. Like, we need to pay our bills. And if you have a
Amen.
record, it is horribly difficult to get. And by the way, his record
Another
was
level
kind
of
of
difficulty. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so you have to have some human understanding. And I think the human understanding and being able to process the why can also be helpful. So I wanted to ask you about that. Does it help you, or do you think it's important in the workplace? We'll specify in the workplace, not in real life, but in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace, or personal life, I should say. In the workplace, does it matter to come to understand why the thing happened when it comes to deciding if this is an appropriate thing to forgive and continue a working relationship?
Mm-hmm. I love that question. And I think because of what you mentioned earlier about the idea of procedure versus policy, and to what I said about like the subjectivity versus objectivity point. And so to one individual, yeah, it does make sense to know that someone apologized, or that forgiveness in and of itself in the workplace is around someone saying sorry and establishing that. To someone else it needs to be an email, to someone else it has to be done publicly, for someone else doing it privately is okay, for someone else us just not talking about it ever again is okay. And so I think that's a hard question to answer, because it depends on the individual, because someone else would have fired him, someone else would have done that, and who would be the one to say that was the right or wrong decision, right? And I think that's the thing with
Right.
forgiveness in the workplace. It always comes back to something that is subjective, and it's the responsibility of our HR and or talent development and or leadership teams to really make the decision on what is policy versus what is going to be our procedure relating to this scenario. And I think
Right.
that's where, yeah, I'm so sorry that I gave a diplomatic answer, but that's
No, no,
really
that's true.
so
It's true.
subjective, because an apology
Yeah.
for me was important in that moment in comparison to someone else that said, you know what, I just want to never talk about this again. I'll keep my hair wrapped. I'll never show it again, or I'll shave my head to make sure everyone is comfortable. So
Girl,
it's
if
very
you shave your head because you
action.
want to, I support you. But if you ever do it for
Sure.
someone else, I will fly all the way to Jamaica and bop you. So don't ever do that for somebody else. I I think that for forgiveness and business, because you do have to think about the whole. This isn't a
Mhm.
one-on-one situation.
Yes.
You are looking at how this is going to affect everybody. And that's so important. And that is what so many people miss. I've had people come at me and say, how can you say that you would fire someone for making one racist comment? How can you say that you would fire someone? And I mean like directly racist, not
Yeah.
like it could be a misunderstanding. I mean racist. Um, for one sexual harassment issue or whatever it is. And I say because of the danger that creates for other people, the message that sends, because the second that you tolerate it,
Yeah.
it all comes.
Yeah.
So
And the burden is left on the person that received the
yes,
impact rather than anybody
yes,
else.
yes, and
That's crazy.
which is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So for forgiveness, number one, there does, and I specify this when I do my, fire the jerk or dealing with the jerk presentation, is you can tell, because people always ask me, well, how can you tell the difference between a jerk and a mistake? Because I make that very clear
Mm,
distinction. And a big part of it is the reaction and the acknowledgement. So if somebody could acknowledge that what they did was harmful, even if it was unintentional,
yes.
and then if they are willing to learn and grow, there's room for forgiveness. Or if they have grown. And I want to talk about that too, because sometimes you have to let somebody go because of something that they did.
Because it's a no nonsense
But
policy.
yeah, because no, you got to go. But let's say they come back to you in a few years and they say, I've changed. This is how I've changed. These are the things I did to change. And I want to come back because I was happy here. And I think that I'm ready to contribute positively. Why not forgive if you can see the work and you can see the effort? Because again, acknowledgement and action and apology,
Yes.
right? Why not forgive? Why not? I mean, seriously, I'm asking seriously. Like, could you think of a reason to just look at them and go, and no? Because I can't. I can think like if you actually hurt somebody or something like that, no, there's no room for
Yeah.
that.
I think to the point
But
of the
what are your
why
thoughts?
not, the idea of why not, I know for me personally, what my response would be, not that if not if this was my personal scenario, but just in general, my perspective on this idea of forgiveness at the end of it all. They've done the work. As to my point earlier in our conversation, the questions, have you acknowledged that what you did actually impacted someone, whether that was your intention or not? Have you learned from the thing that you'd said and or done? Is there improvement in any way in your behavior? And I think being able to answer those questions and them being positive responses, going, okay, if it is that you're like, why not, forgive the person? There's still work I haven't done on me. And I'm being honest about that part. And that, yes, that sounds like a very general, broad comment, but I think there's truth in that for sure. Have I done enough work
Absolutely.
to no longer allow this comment and or this behavior that someone else has done to trigger me, to cause the pain that it did? Have I healed the wound? Have I taken the time on my own with a therapist, a coach,
Mhm.
spiritual leader, whatever that looks like? Have I done enough work inside me to no longer allow this to be a hindrance or a block for me to move on?
And that's
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 the
a great
work.
point. That's a great point because you can forgive them all you want to, but if the work has not been done internally to properly heal from that, bringing them back in can send you down
Yeah.
a
Because you
very
can say,
negative
yes, I
spiral.
forgive because I've done the work. And
Mhm.
yes, I forgive. And I believe that this is a human who is flawed. And you have said, yes, I forgive. Oh, that's the back end about can we forget, which is not what we're talking about here. But I think that's a different part of it that
Right,
says, I have
right.
forgiven this person for doing this thing to me and this sexual assault incident that happened at the job. And they
Now
have
that I would
decided,
not
okay,
bring somebody back in.
but
Forget
that's
you.
the idea of I forgive because I've done so much work on me, but I will never
Right.
forget this. Seeing your face walking these halls will be hard. And so I can say to leadership, if you hire this person back into the fold, though I forgive them, though the world has forgiven them and you have, I am choosing
Right.
to step off from this role. I will no longer be at your company. So
And that's
again, there's a
something you
subject.
have to hit.
Oh,
That's something you
yeah.
have to look at. Will the rest of the staff accept this? And you
And
can lead them to a certain extent. However, if it's going to create a sense of unsafety, the person cannot come back.
it's not worth
They
it.
cannot come back.
It's not
That is
worth
a
it.
no. Um, so if there's even a single person on your team that would feel unsafe because of this person, the answer is no. Now you can support them in their journey in other ways, and thank them for their growth and all of
Mhm.
that. There's other ways to do that. Another important aspect of forgiveness is boundaries, and a lot of people forget that you can
Love that word.
accept. I do too. So that you can accept that this person has grown. You can accept the change, but you can also put up a boundary. And sometimes in the workplace, that's what we have to do
Mhm.
because there will be things where we don't agree. There will be things where we accidentally or even on purpose hurt one another. And you still need to be able to work with that person, but you can put up a boundary. Maybe we don't talk about this particular subject anymore because the last time we did, it got heated, it got ugly, and we're not going to do that again. Maybe because this person, while they've been terrific in every other aspect, told a lie in this circumstance. We know that there's not a trust there in that one area. We can trust them with all these other things, but not in this area. So we put up a boundary. Boundaries. Crucial. Set those boundaries.
Yeah.
Set them hard.
And a boundary is for you. That is a
Yes.
big reminder that boundaries, I mean, it's a big conversation in the mental health space
Yes.
for good reason. And so I'm hoping that as we improve on cultures in the workplace, that it ripples again into the workplace. That is where it needs to be also. And so I love the idea of where are our boundaries, because yes, maybe we have forgiven. We have moved on from that point. All the questions have been answered. We've stepped
We can
into
welcome
the
them
next
back.
phase. Right. This is the next phase. What boundaries are going to be set up as we move forward to both ensure that this either never happens again. If it does, this is how we're going to handle it. And also to protect the well-being of the people that are on the teams. And so, yeah, boundaries is a big one. And it looks like saying them out loud. It can't be just in your head. And then you're going to say, this person broke my boundary. No one knew. It was a boundary.
Yeah. You can't keep the boundaries inside of your brain. That doesn't work.
So saying them out loud is important.
Establish the boundaries.
And they are for you. If you do this thing, I will. When you speak this way, I will.
Yes.
I will do this if you do this. There's something about knowing and accepting. I cannot change the behavior of any human.
And then do it,
only
by the way.
Myself. Yes.
Yes. And then you have to actually do it. And if
Yes.
you want to learn more about that, reach out to Dana Skaggs. She was on the show earlier this season. She's amazing. Boundaries are her jam. We have gone way over time. I'm happy we did it, though, because this is such an important topic. I could have talked about this for hours, literally. Vannessa, you were wonderful. Tell everybody where to find you and how to connect with you, because everybody should.
Yes, indeed. I agree. Vannessa Blackstock, 2 N's, 2 S's, or my father would be mad. So you can find me on LinkedIn. 100%, and that's where all the links will be. My number one is the link tree, where you can be able to connect with me if you want to do operations management, if you're a solopreneur, if you are a career transitioner and want to have that conversation. And also because I'm, as I mentioned, in the job market, really wanting to lean into onboarding specialist roles and people operations sort of roles, HR generalist roles, because I am so pumped about making sure that people have great, impactful career experiences. If people are happy at work, y'all, we are happy everywhere else.
Exactly. And let me tell you, Vannessa is wonderful. I do highly recommend her. Everybody connect to her. Feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. Reach out to us, talk to us. If you're having difficulty with the situation, you don't know if forgiveness is appropriate, if you need help setting boundaries, if you just think something is jacked up that's happening at your job, please reach out to me. I'm always here to help. Thank you so very much. Everybody have a wonderful week. Same time, same place, new topic next week. Bye.